the Dominican order in 1953 at the request of the Holy See, IDO comprises of a team of scholars and researchers wishing to promote a better understanding among Christians and Muslims. The programs of IDO study is long through the primary sources at a very high academic level, providing researchers and students with a library specializing in Islam. In fact, this center contains the largest collection of ancient copies of the Quran. And as you heard from Dr. Jiwa and Dr. Mirza, the DTU has been offering a number of programs, and Dominican School has supported these efforts through academic research and study. And we have taken up this topic of the Quran, the sacred text. We began taking up this topic with a lecture that was given by Archbishop of Oakland, Alexander Burnett, who served as our interim for the interim bishop of Oakland, and is one of the principal organizers of interreligious dialogue for the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. His talk focused on the history of Muslim-Christian relations. We then had a lecture by Brother Minlid Dal, a Dominican brother, who offered a second lecture, and he spoke about the Dominican friars and their involvement with Islamic studies and pastoral work in Muslim communities, especially in Afghanistan. We followed this lecture, as Dr. Jiwa said, with a conference on the philosophy of Ibn Arabi, which also included a Quran workshop led by Professor Carl Ernst. What's exciting about it is even though these events I speak in past tense, they're still present to us. All of the videos of these events are on our website, so please do take a look at them. And we also know that on October 17th, Dr. Mirza will offer a lecture as a follow-up also to our exhibit. So I ask you to join with me today that we may invoke the Holy Spirit in the work that we do to guide our sharing, to help us recognize that in the discovery of something new today, we may come to a deeper understanding of the way God's Word was given to us, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And so we make this prayer in Christ's name. So I would like to first introduce to you the program. Let me introduce the whole program. We're going to have a small presentation on the Quran, just to give us a general context of the Quran. And then each of the artists is going to speak about their work. And following that, Professor Verani will also talk about Islamic art and beauty. And when we finish that lecture, we'll have a few, I think, minutes for some questions and answers. And then we will follow that up with all moving back out to the artwork, where Professor Ahmed will do some recitation, so we may hear the Quran in its linguistic view, and be near the artwork visually, and also hear the rendered. So, I'd like to introduce our student, Mohammed Abdul Latif Finch. As Dr. Jiwa mentioned, Mohammed is a religious leader here in the Bay Area. He completed his religious studies in the traditional sacred sciences of Islam at Zaytuna, and is now pursuing a master's degree of philosophy here at the Dominican School. Mohammed is very dedicated to his studies. I've had the pleasure of having Mohammed in my philosophical ethics class, and I can tell you, his questions really get things going. So he's a lively student, and he keeps the class going, and he keeps the teachers going. Mohammed is also called upon for various speaking engagements and shares his knowledge about Islam and the Muslim community to various groups nationally and internationally. Today he will offer us a general introduction about the Quran. And even though today's schedule doesn't give us time to cover such an important topic, we hope that this presentation will at least break open our understanding of the Quran. So please join me in welcoming Mohammed.
How are you going to explain to people that may or may not have ever heard of the Quran, what the Quran is basically about?
sort of wrap their head around what God is like in the Islamic tradition, because the Quran is very much related to that kind of understanding. So if we take this, and if this is a bit confusing, either blame the SPT, School of Philosophy, or blame me for not understanding it again. But to put it in something I was pondering lately, at the beginning, and really all the way through, God is understood in the sense of transcendence in the Muslim tradition. So, in other words, God is unlike anything that is incidental. He's unlike anything that suffers non-existence at some point. Okay? Because he simply is. If he weren't unlike his creation, then he would be like them. If he is like his creation, then he is like an incident, then he is an incident. However, he is not like his creation, so therefore he is always his creator. He is not an incident. So God is not incidental. To understand that, you can ponder that, but what's more important at this point is that we understand that basic idea that God always is in the tradition, and that there are no incidences when it comes to God. Well, it's also important to understand that his attributes are the same. His attributes are the same. So if we say that God is the most merciful, he's always been that way. He's never not been that way. And how is it important for us in our particular time that I have with you is that as his attributes are like this, they're always and forever, well, the Quran is considered to be God's speech, the speech of God. So that means when someone opens the book and starts to read the speech that's there, which we'll get into it, it's always been there. There's never a time when it began, and never a time when it will end, and its meanings are always and forever, to the extent that those who are scholars in explaining the meanings of the Quran, they will go to the extent to explain that these meanings, as per some traditions, have 60,000 different meanings inside each line. But that's also just a number, because God's meaning is never ending. So the Arabs have this thing with the word 70. If you say 70, like if you had, and it is archaic, we can understand. If you say the word 70 to them, they say, oh, you got 55 camels. Oh, it's 55. If you have 68 camels. There's 70 camels. Oh. So 60,000 is meant in this way. It's not to say that's the limit of it, but it's to understand it's a huge number. So, okay, fine. That's great. What is the Quran? That's another question that came to my mind. What is the Quran? What are we talking about? If we talk about language in terms of etymology, well, there's two different ways that traditionally the Quran has been understood. The Quran is literally comes from the word qira'a, and the Quran itself is the recital. But that brings a problem when you understand it that way. If you take it that way, it brings a problem because the Quran is not the action of one who reads it. Right? It's not the action of one who reads it. It's much further and beyond that, which is why some of them have gone with the other possibility that means the gathering, which I think is very interesting because one of the first things that the book says is that that is the book in which there is that. First of all, it doesn't say this. It says that is the book in which there is no doubt. That again means far away. That is the book in which there is no doubt. Now, that brings doubt. It's a risky statement. No, it does. It brings doubt. Why? Because we know, historically speaking, chronologically speaking, that book was not present as a compendium of signs. And Muslims simply don't like to say verses because that's poetry, but signs that are gathered together into one text did not happen in the lifetime of the Prophet. So when the Revelation says that is the book in which there is no doubt, it brings doubt because there's no book. That is the book in which there is no doubt, but instantaneously it brings doubt. Which is why some of them they go with the other meaning of the possibility of the root of Qur'an, which means the gathering. Kitab is the same thing. That was gathered. But al-Majmu'ah, the gathering. It's very interesting. So the question that came to mind is fine. So if there was no book, then what is the Qur'an that is being In other words, if there was no book in that time, the book came after, then what were they reciting? What is the nature of this recital? And this is why we said that the Qur'an is the meaning that is pointed to by the recitations that are located on the page or in the MP3 player or some other means. So that when a person, as I said, the Qur'an is not the book. When you open the book up, these are the signs, indications, these are the language and the letters and the medium by which God's presence is indicated. The book itself, when you open it. That's why it's such a sacred text. Right? No Muslim basically that I know of will say that no, don't put this in such places and other places because that's literally God's speech. But they understand that the meanings that are behind that, the association between the physical text and the pages, and the meanings that are behind that, the symbolism is so sacred that with the same kind of reverence, they would deal with the book in that way. Fine. So the Quran is not the book that's being held. That's called a mushaf. In Arabic, the term is called mushaf. So there's a difference between the recitation itself, or the gathering itself, and the book that someone has on the shelf, or hopefully in their hands. Fine. Can you please give me a normative definition? I told you the SPT will mess you up. So the Quran has defined it. So the normative definition, what we find in the tradition of Islam itself, in other words, taking it from the practitioners or those who adhere to the faith itself, generally speaking, the Quran is defined then as God's speech, both inimitable and unique, sent down to the last prophet as considered in Islam, in its precise meaning and wording transmitted to us by numerous persons called tawatur, both verbally and writing. Which means that the book that we have and what we're looking at is something that it has come down by so many groups. There are so many groups of people that testify in unison about the fact that it came from this individual, this prophet, and is considered Islam, that it's impossible to deny that it's impossible to say that it came from other than him. This is called tawatur. This is the book that has come down. And that's the normative definition. So the question then is, from that point I was asking myself, then why or how do the permanent and the temporary interact? Fine, if you say this is the definition and this is how it works, why? How does the temporary and the permanent, in other words, is there ever an intersection between what always was and might be? And this is what came to mind, that the Creator has not only brought about the creation, but continues to sustain it and direct it continuously in the way that He has created us and all those around us. He's given us many forms of guidance. So we have a system of guiding principles, which some might call natural laws. Those are there. But there's also a special form of guidance for mankind from the outset. So the book will speak for itself. And what does it say? The narration of the nature of this life. In other words, in the Islamic tradition and the Muslim tradition, our first home is not this world, but our first home was actually in paradise. And this transpired in paradise as it comes according to the Quran, when God said to Adam and all the progeny, get you down all from here. And if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows guidance, on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. So not only will there be an intersection between the temporary and permanent, but it's a guarantee, according to this tradition from God. And the guidance comes down through prophets, and it will continue, and it's continued to come down according to the Muslim tradition. It ends, prophecy itself ends and culminates with the Prophet Muhammad. And so the Quran is considered to be this kind of final say when it comes to communication. So again, this is why it has such a status for Muslims. Then the question that came to me was, I hope you like my questions. understand is that if it were sent to anyone else, humanity would not be able to relate to the presentation, and would then have a proof against God. If it had been sent down to an angel, we would always just say, well, we're not angels, so we couldn't relate to this. But there's something more important, I think, than that, and that relates directly to why I think we're all here in the artwork, in the exhibition that we're looking at. It's more because the Qur'an was meant to be revealed onto the heart of a human being. And it's something that occurs to the heart of a human being. And not something that occurs to the brain of a human being, but it occurs to the heart of a human being. Because the heart is the core of a human being. And that person's heart, upon whom the book was revealed to, according to this tradition, was such a heart that the mountains, had the same communication been revealed to mountains, the mountains would have been reduced to dust. So what kind of heart is this? It's the kind of, so the sense, the wisdom rather, of the book being revealed onto a human being is not only so that we can relate, but so that our heart can be like this heart. It's a challenge. And so hearts that are inspired by the book, they are moved to recite it. A lot like someone who, for example, normally speaking, the Quran is read daily. It's read in prayers, specifically, editorially, daily. But outside of that, people will take time to read the book, and why is that? And I ask myself that question, and it's kind of like when you receive a love letter from someone that you love so much, and you realize it's addressed to you, it even talks to you. It's not just talking about this incident and that incident, but it's talking to you. And you haven't seen this entity in a little while. Because in the Muslim tradition, the idea is that we knew God before we came here, and that's why we're called to remember Him. You can't remember something you don't know. So when reading the book, it's a remembrance that the heart remembers the creator of it. The heart remembers the one who created it. And as a result, the hearts are moved to recite it. And the hearts, again, are moved to ponder it. And the hearts are moved to decorate with it. Right? When you love something, what do you do with it? You give it many names. You decorate with it. You decorate it. You decorate with it. You want it around you. You want to drown yourself in it. And this is because of the fact that for the Muslim, the Quran literally embraces every aspect of life altogether. So it makes absolute sense in due time that we see the kind of events that we're seeing, and seeing the kind of the attempts that people are putting into expressing their relationship